Something unexpected just happened in the NFL world, and it has fans, analysts, and even players paying very close attention. One of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, a four-time MVP and Super Bowl champion, suddenly spoke up about a young rookie trying to find his place in the league. And what he said about Shedeur Sanders caught a lot of people off guard, because this wasn't casual praise. It wasn't one of those polite answers players give just to move on to the next question. This sounded personal, thoughtful. Almost like Aaron Rodgers had been quietly watching Shedeur's journey for years. And when someone with Rodgers' level of football intelligence says something like that, people in the league start listening. Because Rodgers has seen everything in nearly 2 decades in the NFL. The highs, the failures, the pressure, the criticism. So when he suddenly began talking about Shedeur Sanders and the way the young quarterback has handled adversity, it felt like more than just commentary. It felt like a message. But the story actually started with something much simpler. Rodgers was doing a normal press conference, answering the usual questions about games, team strategy, and the season ahead. Then one reporter asked something interesting. They brought up how Rodgers has now been in the league so long that he's starting to face the sons of players he once competed against. That's when Rodgers started laughing a little, realizing just how long he's been around. He mentioned a few names, players whose fathers he battled years ago who now have sons playing in the NFL. One of those names was Antoine Winfield Jr., whose father Rodgers faced earlier in his career. Another example was Chris Jenkins' son. And then the conversation shifted to someone who carries one of the most famous last names in football history, Shedeur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders. The moment Rodgers said that name, the room suddenly got more interesting. Because Rodgers actually has a connection to the Sanders family that goes back nearly 20 years. He talked about a Monday night game back in 2005 when he was still a young quarterback with the Green Bay Packers. At the time, he was just a backup, still learning the league and waiting for his opportunity. The Packers were playing the Baltimore Ravens, and things got ugly fast. The Ravens were dominating the game. Rodgers joked that he came into the game when they were already down 41-3. And standing on the other side of the field that night was Deion Sanders, one of the most electrifying players the NFL had ever seen. Rodgers remembered having a short exchange with Deion between the third and fourth quarters. Even in the middle of a brutal loss, the moment stuck with him. The Ravens eventually won that game 51-3. It was one of those games young players just try to survive. Rodgers laughed about it years later, saying he was proud he managed to leave the game without throwing an interception to Deion. It was a small victory in a very bad night, but what made that memory powerful wasn't the score. It was the connection it created. Because nearly 2 decades later, Rodgers now finds himself watching Deion's son step into the same league. And that's when Rodgers said something that made people lean in. He didn't say he had just heard about Shedeur Sanders. He didn't say he had seen a few highlights online. Rodgers said he had been following Shedeur's career. That one sentence might not sound dramatic at first, but when you think about it, it actually says a lot. Aaron Rodgers is one of the busiest players in professional sports. His schedule revolves around studying opponents, preparing game plans, training, and managing the pressure of leading an NFL franchise. He's not sitting around studying every college quarterback entering the league. Yet somehow Shedeur Sanders caught his attention enough that Rodgers was tracking his journey. That journey started in a place many NFL stars never even consider. Jackson State University. When Deion Sanders took over the program, many people were curious about what would happen. Then his son arrived as the starting quarterback. And from the very beginning, Shedeur looked comfortable running the offense. Game after game, he showed poise, accuracy, and leadership that surprised a lot of observers. The numbers started piling up quickly. Wins followed. Jackson State began dominating the conference. Critics tried to downplay the performance, saying the competition wasn't strong enough. But people who actually understood quarterback play could see something different. They saw timing, decision-making, confidence under pressure. Rodgers clearly saw it too. Shedeur eventually led Jackson State to an undefeated regular season and a conference championship. That alone would have made his college career memorable. But the real